Let's get to the bottom of this one. Unspoken truths that I miss one. Tap into the minds of the people, rather acknowledge before I dismiss one. Atheists, Muslim, Christians, Buddhists, they all got usage. All got perspective, it's a collective. Get to the bottom where the truth is, where the heart's uncovered. Where you detox from all of the lies you smothered. Where them tries could have killed you, but with faith you recover. Yeah, peel off the makeup, we finna take off. Never said it'd be a cakewalk. Meditate till we charged up. Execute goes regardless. Decalcify my pineal. Breaking language barriers, we saw millennials. Planets passing age rotations, down me we owe. So down me we know. Sometimes we can be slow, that's why my ears open. Every drop you add could complete the ocean. Speak up, play your part too. Been vulnerable, it's an art tool. Reflect on all the juice like torture. It's on you, tell the truth.
Yeah, we about to have a good conversation. Yeah, let's go. We about to have a good conversation. Yeah, let's go. We about to have a good conversation. Yeah, let's go. Listen. Yeah, aim in the fit so you see in the mirror. Play with your focus and watch it get clear. Polish your crown, turn it up if you wear it. You live in the root, release what you're fearing. And watch it all rise, the righteous will hear it. They calling us twisted, I'm not even caring. Because it's unseen, the mind is too barren. They won't even heal it, they pass it to cheering. We over here healing, conversing and listening. Know that the truth isn't always appealing, but end it with healing and find your beginning. Frequency positive, what you receiving. Perception is up to you, what you believing. What you retrieving, mentally speaking. Life that they breathing, no words from a heathen. Don't know it all, but together undefeated. Conversation, rather want it, you need it. Come fill up your tank before it's depleted. Don't care if you calling on Allah or Jesus, Buddha or Christian, not being facetious. Come to the trial with the students and teachers. All got a voice, we the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. Conversation, rather want it, you need it. Come fill up your tank before it's depleted. Don't care if you calling on Allah or Jesus, Buddha or Christian, not being facetious. Come to the trial with the students and teachers. All got a voice, we the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. Hey. Yeah.
We about to have a good conversation. Yeah, let's go. We about to have a good conversation. Yeah, let's go. Praying for truth cause the world is so fickle. Keeping my mental how clean as a whistle. Attention's a trap that can lead you astray. Steering this ship through the storm and the haze. Real conversations are lost in the greed. Others get lost in the web that it weaves. Sift through the rhetoric, uncover schemes. Knowledge inherited, this is imperative. I got a lot on my mind and I'm sharing it. Apples to oranges, it ain't no comparisons. I'm the type that'll never break character. I'm the type to make memories and cherish them. Trust intuition and doubt of disparity. Pursuing the echoes of wisdom. Chasing that moment of clarity. Conversation rather one and you need it. Come fill up your tank before it's depleted. Don't care if you calling on Allah or Jesus, Buddha or Christian, not being facetious. Come to the track with the students and teachers. All got a voice, who the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen. Conversation rather one and you need it. Come fill up your tank before it's depleted. Don't care if you calling on Allah or Jesus, Buddha or Christian, not being facetious. Come to the track with the students and teachers. All got a voice, who the ears that'll listen. Who the ears that'll listen. We the ears that'll listen.
It's on you, tell the truth.
Peace, everyone. I am Universe Badger, Kimberly Vertigan. I'm a life coach, integrative holistic health practitioner, herbalist, Reiki spiritual healer, trauma-informed care certified, and certified sonomic mind, body, and healing practitioner. Tonight on the People's Podcast, we're having a conversation with Keith McHenry, co-founder of Food Not Bombs. For decades, Keith has been involved in feeding people, challenging the way that we think about hunger and poverty, and asking some difficult questions about our priorities as a society. Tonight isn't about telling anyone what to think. It's about listening, learning, and asking questions and having a conversation about hunger, homelessness, food waste, community activism, and our responsibilities to one another. Keith, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with us.
Thank you so much for having me. That's great.
And Golden Eagle, could you please read the deeper meaning?
Yeah, absolutely. When we hear the word hunger, we may immediately think the problem is that there simply isn't enough food. Then we look around and see restaurants, grocery stores, warehouses, farms, and households throwing away food every single day. That creates a deeper question. Is hunger really about not having enough, or is it about access, priorities, resources, and who we decide deserves them? Tonight, we're talking with someone who has spent decades confronting those questions directly. This conversation gives us an opportunity to look beyond statistics and policies and think about the human beings behind them. Because sometimes change begins with something as simple as seeing another person, listening to their experience, and deciding that their basic needs matter. Let's have a good conversation.
So,
Great.
first off, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, Keith.
Yeah, so I'm Keith McHenry, and I'm one of the original 8 people that started Food Not Bombs in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I was a produce worker, and I felt horrible that I was throwing away all this food. So I started taking it to public housing a few blocks away from the grocery store. I was working at Bread and Circus, and the I was amazed at how appreciative the people were. And then one of the things that happened was one day I show up and they'd been building this big glass building across the street. And the families that were getting the food were telling me, oh, wow, that's a nuclear weapons lab. And that's where I got the idea for the name Food Not Bombs. This was a building that was on the edge of a giant, vast, empty stretch of empty land that was behind MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now that is called Tech Square, and it's like tons and tons of buildings. And anyway, so then I got the idea with this food. Why don't we organize a soup line outside the stockholders meeting of the Bank of Boston? And so we were going to dress up like hobos and say, hey, look at the future. If Reagan does what he says he's going to do, they're going to divert money from social services and put it into Star Wars and the MX missile system. And so the night before, we realized we didn't have enough people to dress up as hobos, like the Great Depression. So I went to the local homeless shelter and talked to the guys there, Pine Street Inn. And I gave a little speech about our protests. And they're like, this is great, a protest like the 60s. And they show up. And it was this amazing event. They're going, God bless you, every time you gave them a cup of soup. They were telling us about how there was no food for homeless people in Boston. This is and Reagan had just been inaugurated. It was 30 days after he became president. So people would come by and go, oh my God, he's already soup lines in America. This is unbelievable. So they encouraged us to do this every day. So we started doing Food Not Bombs every day. And so we gave 2 weeks notice to our employers. And so Bread and Circus let me continue to get the discarded produce. And I hooked up a tofu connection with White Wave Tofu from Western Mass. And so I would get a couple of 2 5-gallon buckets of chunks of tofu that didn't fit in their little, square boxes that they were selling them in. And so we started doing this every day. We would pick up food all around Cambridge. We'd take a bunch of it to the public housing or to daycare centers or to Rosie's Place, about a women's shelter. And then we would do meals and street performances every afternoon in Harvard Square with the meals we'd cooked. And so that's how Food Not Bombs started. And I'd already been a vegan since 1993. So we were naturally, the 8 of us were vegans. And then days we called it vegetarian. And so we were, that we just based our whole program on recovering this vegan food and making meals, doing street performances and handing it out and trying to build consciousness about how we could be diverting our money from the military and making sure everybody in our country had the things that they needed, healthcare and access to education and housing and so on. And so I did that for 8 years in Boston. And there was we were friends with the mayor and city council of Cambridge. And we organized a few marches from City Hall to Draper Lab, this weapons lab. And so, that's how I got started on Food Not Bombs. And then I moved to San Francisco, and I thought, well, it's the most liberal city in America. They'll be cool with doing this. And we were approached by a hippie one day saying we decided we would do it at the corner of Haight and Stanton, at the entrance to Golden Gate Park, because that's a lot of people lived in Golden Gate Park, and there was a lot of tourists walking by, and there were no meals for homeless people in the park in the Haight-Ashbury on Mondays. So we chose Mondays. And it was going really well when this hippie came by, and he goes, "Oh, you could get a permit for this." And in Cambridge, we had a street performance permit. So that's what I assumed I was applying for. So I wrote a letter to the Parks Department. And then the police would come by and go, "Hey, did you get your permit?" And I go, "Oh, wow, they never did send me anything." So I'd go over to the Parks Department office on the other side of the Panhandle and say, "Hey, we heard that there's this permit you're supposed to give us." And they didn't know what I was talking about. And so August 15th of 88, riot police came out of Golden Gate Park and arrested 9 of us for serving food without a permit. And ultimately, there were arrests the next Monday, then the 22nd, and 24 people were arrested. That's when the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force came and observed the arrest. And they filed a memo to the FBI office saying that we were a credible national security threat. Their letter was written on August 29th, 1988. Then that Labor Day weekend, the police made 54 arrests, and the mayor, I've been trying to get a hold of the mayor, and other community activists are trying to get a hold of the mayor to find out why this is happening. And they finally, I met with him, Art Agnos, and it turned out there was no permit. They just were arresting us. There wasn't a permit to have. So we figured out a permit process, but then it turned out the permit wasn't really the issue. They just did not want us talking about peace and social justice issues and feeding the homeless at the corner of Haight and Stanton. So ultimately, we ended up being arrested 1,000 times in San Francisco over the course of 8 years. I was arrested 94 times there. I ended up being the first white person to get charged with the California 3 strikes law, and I faced 25 to life. And then when I pled out on one of the charges, because they were bringing riot police to all my court appearances, and it didn't seem like it was likely I would, with a jury seeing riot police guarding the courtroom, and we couldn't get the judge to order an end to that, I ended up pleading out to assault, battery, strong arm robbery, and I got credit for time served, 500 days, and my probation was I couldn't be violated unless I was accused of a murder or bombing. And so I did that because I ended up being arrested a couple more times for feeding people, and I didn't want to end up spending, 3 months in San Quentin. So they tried to violate me one time, my probation officer, but our agreement was that unless it was a murder charge or a bombing charge, I wasn't to be sent away. So, but all of that caused people to be like, "What is going on?" So even on the second arrest in the second Monday when the Joint Terrorism Task Force was there, this brand new cable network called CNN videotaped the whole the arrest, and it went worldwide, and we were in the New York Times, the Times of India, the Times of London, and people were like, "We're not going to put up with that. We want to start our own group in defiance." So what they ended up doing was, I had taken notes on how I did the second group. I made a flyer, 7 steps to starting the Food Not Bombs, and then I would mail that to you. And before long, we had groups like in Portland, Seattle, New York City, and Tompkins Square Park, Victoria, British Columbia. And then by 1992, we were able to hold our first world gathering. And that's where we came up with the 3 principles: that the food would always be vegan and vegetarian, free to anyone, rich or poor, drunk or sober, that there would be no headquarters or presidents or directors, that each chapter would be autonomous and would make decisions by consensus, and invite the people coming to eat with us to participate in the decision making of the local chapter, and that we wouldn't be a charity, but that we would be dedicated to taking nonviolent direct action to change society. So no one had to live in the streets or eat at a soup kitchen. So this ended up launching what is now a movement that's active in at least 1,000 cities and 70 countries. Could be as many as 1,500 cities, could be more than 70 countries, because it just keeps growing. Every week I am asked to update the Food Not Bombs map on foodnotbombs.net with new chapters, and even small towns like Victoria, Texas have started very, very active Food Not Bombs chapters. So it's now like this global phenomenon.
So we have a whole bunch of questions because there's something that stuck out to us. I want to introduce Peace Divine Creation, one of my Twisted Team members.
Peace. How you doing?
Very good.
So ask the question.
I heard you say you got arrested for feeding the homeless, and then later you said the charge was strong arm robbery. I was wondering, how did it get to that?
Okay, so that's a good question. So what happened was they were doing everything they could to try to stop us. And so they had got court orders against us doing it. So we were getting felony conspiracy charges. But then what happened is on January 4th, 4 days after the three strikes law came into being, I was standing in front of City Hall with a chef's coat and a chef's hat. And we're about to serve the meal, and I had a big sign that said "Viva Zapatista, no NAFTA." And so this guy came out and with a flip phone. I'd never seen a cell phone before, and he had a tow truck take my truck away. So I went into City Hall, and you have to go through metal detectors because this is the famous City Hall where Milk and Moscone had been assassinated, right? So they had metal detectors on the entrance. And I go to the phone booth on the first floor to find out where my truck went. And this man came in and started smashing me against the phone booth. So I told the tow lady, I said, "I'm sorry, somebody's smashing me against the phone booth. I need to go upstairs and I'll call you back." So I go upstairs and find out where my truck has been towed to. And I'm coming down that beautiful rotunda in San Francisco City Hall that's been featured in many movies. And there was two businessmen and an officer at the bottom of the steps. And they go, "Hey, Keith, we want to talk to you." And I go, "Yeah, what's up?" And imagine I'm wearing a chef's coat and a chef's hat with Food Not Bombs logos embroidered on them. And I go up to them and say, "Yeah, what's happening?" And they go, "Oh, you're under arrest for assault, battery, strong arm robbery. That's a strike under the California three strikes law." So the evidence was that the man that attacked me, who turned out to be the film commissioner for the mayor, Frank Jordan, had gone out and bought a $99 beeper or pager. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember those, but anyway, they that was the evidence. If it was a $98 beeper, it wouldn't have been a three-strike felony. So then my next strikes were we got a fax from Amnesty International London saying that we would be prisoners of conscience if convicted, and they work for our unconditional release. So we're handing out copies of this fax, and one of the politicians, her name was Barbara Kaufman. She was basically the Rush Limbaugh of AM radio in San Francisco. Her aide, Nancy Kitt, was so angry that we showed up because she really hated the homeless. They hated Food Not Bombs. And she slammed the door on me and my friend Jesse. And I put my hand up to stop the door. And it turned out the glass on the door, my hand ended up going through this very thin sheet of glass that was to allow light into each of the offices. And so I went and got paper towels to stop the bleeding, went to actually across the street to my truck to drive to the emergency room, and I get arrested for assault with a deadly weapon. They claimed I was trying to kill Nancy Kitts with a piece of glass. And we, every day, because the police took our tables and our equipment every day, we were borrowing milk crates, Berkeley Farm Dairy milk crates from the vegetarian restaurant near there on Market Street. And so I got charged with possession of stolen property, which was 24 Berkeley Farms Dairy milk crates. And because the riot police were in the courtroom every time, I eventually decided This is a political case. The evidence doesn't make any difference in this kind of case. And we got a judge to agree to have this probation. So that's how I got credit for time served, 500 days. And my probation was only, I didn't have to worry about being violated for getting arrested for feeding the hungry, and I did get arrested a couple of times after that before they stopped the arrest totally in San Francisco. So they made a total of 1,000 arrests of our volunteers over the course of 8 years. So that's how that happened.
That's definitely believable.
Yeah, it helps Food Not Bombs though, in a weird way, because people were shocked, and so more and more groups started up. There'd be news stories about, we'd have these big rallies. In fact, we had one where the San Francisco Mime Troupe came to the before. It's funny, two of my court appearances. One was on Halloween, so we called it Unmasked Corporate Greed, and inside the courthouse, there were like little dishes of candy all throughout the building, 850 Bryant Street, which is also the police headquarters. And so we're standing. The mime troupe is pretending like they're, one guy looked like me, and he opens his coat and he's got all these bagels tied to the inside of his coat like it was a criminal, and they're fake police and the theater group are arresting them. And then right behind them is us serving real bagels and real food, and we are really being arrested on the top steps of the courthouse. And that ended up in a bunch of theater magazines about how life imitated theater or theater imitated life. It was very funny. And then we went around with all the candy and handed it out to people. We take the candy from the bowls in all the offices and hand them out, to people in the hallways. So here they were violating the same law. The next one of the next court appearances, and the one the day before I settled the case, it turns out to be Valentine's Day. And so there's Valentine's candy all throughout the courthouse that day, and we handed out took the Valentine's candy off the desks and everything and handed that out all through so it was a very ironic that the government's handing out candy, but we're being arrested for handing out real food.
Golden Eagle, you have something you want to ask?
No, I'm all ears.
Cool, thanks, man.
Yeah.
So, and that's common, honestly, that they did this to about feeding the homeless and stuff, because now not only do you have to have a permit to feed certain people, like in California and stuff like that, there's laws against it, that it's illegal to feed the homeless.
Yeah, in California, they actually made this state law, which we actually had a Food Not Bombs statewide gathering when they were proposing it. We tried to stop it first. There was a pretty big effort to stop it, but they finally passed it. And so we agreed as Food Not Bombs that we would never comply with the law. And they do kind of hassle us in Santa Cruz every year about this law. They basically send us a bill for $750, and we just ignore it. But you're supposed to have, you really couldn't feed the whole. It would be very difficult to do what we do if you met all their restrictions. For instance, you'd have to have a commercial kitchen. Now, our kitchen is really high quality, but we, because of our experience with the government, we don't let them know where it is or what's going on with it. But it could be a commercial kitchen. But our concern was that a lot of the Food Not Bombs groups cook in their houses and stuff, and they would then be put in a position where they'd have to go to Costco or Walmart or something and buy all their packaged food and hand out packaged food. So they wouldn't be giving out hot vegan meals to anybody. So that's why, groups that are not Food Not Bombs are really harassed, but we have this agreement amongst ourselves that we will just ignore the state law. And so we have actually not, since they passed this law, been arrested for serving food. I have been arrested relatively recently. We have a thing called atmospheric rivers here, which it's basically like you're standing in a river outside. The winds are very high. The rain is traveling it's horizontal to the earth. It's so intense. And so we got an agreement with the chief of police to serve food in a parking garage so that you wouldn't get soaking wet while you're trying to eat, and that the wind wouldn't blow the food off your plates. But then, when the city manager came back from Christmas vacation, that I ended up getting arrested in the parking garage, because you're not allowed to be in a parking garage in Santa Cruz for more than 15 minutes, and you have to prove you have a vehicle in that garage. So that was just a way of harassing us. It wasn't technically for, there was no crime of serving food, although we do have a cease and desist order in Santa Cruz against feeding people, which has been actually kind of helpful, because there was a lot of media about that. And then people see us like a year later. I thought you had a cease and desist order against feeding people. And we're like, nah, yeah, we just ignored that. And it showed people that you can be empowered. You don't need to be necessarily following these draconian laws that they're putting out there, and what's more important, than be meeting the needs of people living outside. So that's what we're doing. And they made a special law against us in Santa Cruz, which we also ignore. And the fact that they make a big deal out of it in the local media, and then we're obviously ignoring it, only works to our advantage. So. And so far, there's other than church groups, sadly, they're the only ones that get jacked up under this California law. But they do get harassed. But they're not part of they have something to lose often too, which we have nothing to lose because we don't own anything. But they have a church that they could lose. They have things, and they have a congregation that could lose property and stuff. So, it's easier to intimidate them than it is to us, because we don't have anything for them to take but an old vehicle or something. What are they going to do?
And what are they going to do? Give you a felon? Make you a felon?
Yeah. So we don't, they're sort of harassing us a bit more right now by ticketing our vehicles and stuff, if they're like step away for a few minutes. But otherwise, they know. The city attorney in Santa Cruz has told the city council to leave us alone, because it's just not worth their while. The amount, if they arrested us, we just keep doing it, and it would become a huge, we're a tourist town, and people would go, we're not going to spend our money in Santa Cruz. They're arresting people for feeding the homeless. Screw that. So,
go ahead, Divine Creation.
You ever thought about asking a church that's on Main Street somewhere for a space in their parking lot, and then call it a food fair, kind of like a wine tasting thing? Technically, you're not feeding the homeless. You just got a lot of food out there for them to taste so much that they make a plate.
We could not get in.
The technicalities.
Yeah, no churches would let us do that in Santa Cruz, because they're intimidated by the city. So, there were times when we had tried to do that, and we could not get any churches to cooperate. And because they got something to lose. And the fact that one church that was having what they called a coffee house for homeless people every Monday night, where you could come in and you could pray and you get free meal and everything, they were brutal to them. They eventually forced the pastor to resign, and they stopped the whole program. So they're like serious about making sure homeless people don't have any access to food. But the other thing is that we're trying to do this in a public area where a lot of people walk by, so we can have a conversation about this. Our name is Food, Not Bombs. When Obama was president, the State Department compared us to Al Qaeda. And they wanted to say who's more dangerous, Food Not Bombs or Al Qaeda, and they said that we were, because we were trying to convince the American public that money should be diverted from military spending to healthcare, education, and other social services. And if I had not seen that twice on C-SPAN, I would have thought I hallucinated the first time, but I happened to see it a couple of days later repeated. And that's why we are considered America's most hardcore terrorist group, is because they're really worried that the military could be defunded if and I write about these things in my book, Soup Street, my autobiography, my memoir, and it just shows to show, that there's, the people in power are very worried. It's a beautiful thing, because just by having an idea, saying, the food, not bombs, that the American public could be end up demanding that our resources, instead of the $1 trillion going to a losing war in Iran, could go to making sure everyone in America had food, education, housing. I mean, we got the money, but we just need to be giving it to the people that own Raytheon and Palantir and all these military contractors and the billionaires that own them, rather than to the veterans that are living on the streets of America that have already had, these poor veterans now that are on these ships where they don't even have food for them there. I mean, they can't even feed their own sailors and troops, and yet they're also trying to stop people from feeding the American people on the streets. It's pretty insane.
So I have a question for you. How does it feel knowing that everything that you've gone through with this work is simply because you wanted to make a difference?
Well, it's really it's just been a wonderful way to live. I've just loved every minute of it. I mean, even in jail, I have a chapter called Lunch Crimes. And so, when we're in the holding cell, there's I think 7 of us. And the only thing we had to do was to watch them fingerprint people in the, in the fingerprint booth. And so, a lot of times when you're in jail, they go, "What you in for?" And one guy was in there for, shoplifting a sandwich out of 7-Eleven. Another person's shoplifted a sandwich out of the Castro Safeway. 2 of the guys were in there for dining and dashing at Charlie's on Polk Street. And then they turned to me, "What are you in here for?" Because I'm in here for feeding people at City Hall for their lunch. And they're going, lunch crimes. This is crazy. It's just, and then I run into one of the guys, once I'm facing 3 strikes and I haven't been bailed yet on the case. And we're on this giant holding cell in Oakland. And the one guy sees me across the sea of other prisoners. And he goes, "Oh, that's the guy we were in jail in for lunch crimes. That's Keith. He's feeding people. We should vote for him for mayor." And everyone, "Yeah, let's vote for Keith for mayor." And then I go, "But we're all felons here. We're in the felony cell. We can't vote." But anyway, thanks for your support. So it's really a remarkable thing. And just the whole thing of doing food on bombs, hanging out at during the meal, preparing the meal, talking to you're all the cooks, you're all having a great time cooking, then you're sharing the meal, and and people are so grateful, and you have these amazing conversations with the people that have come out to eat. It's such a beautiful way to have lived, and I hope I express that in my memoir, Soup Street. It's been quite the life.
You have children?
I have no children. No, my first wife could not have children, and we were together 17 years, and then by the time then it was too late. Really, my second wife, it was past those years. So.
Were you born in the 50s?
I was born in 1957 in Frankfurt, West Germany.
I thought you were around my father's age.
Yeah. And the hospital I was born in had been built by the Nazis, and it still had the swastikas on the corners of the building. So my first picture is my mom holding me in front of all these bright red tulips with swastikas in the background. Now that building has been destroyed. It's now a brand new hospital, and that's actually where a lot of the people that are being injured in the Persian Gulf now are sent to. There's been big blood drives in Frankfurt and Stuttgart and other parts of where U.S. has military hospitals in Germany. So my father was in the armored division in the same unit as Elvis Presley. And he used to joke that I had dinner with Elvis Presley because even though my mom was breastfeeding me, and we were in the cafeteria, and Elvis was in the same cafeteria as my dad and me in Wiesbaden at the military base. And so my dad talked to Elvis, a bit because they were in the exact same armored division. And my dad flew L-19s, and he was surveillance to make sure the tanks didn't bump into people's buildings and stuff like that. But they did, apparently. I mean, Dad had a funny story where the turret of a tank went through the wall of a German family's house, and he could see from the airplane the wife and husband in their underwear jumping up and down, like, thrusting their fists at the U.S. military for knocking the side of their house out. My dad.
So you technically did have dinner with Elvis.
Yeah, I had dinner with Elvis. Yeah.
Technically. So why do you think that we can have so much food waste and still people go hungry? So there's so much food wasted, but yet people are still going hungry.
Yeah, well, in reality, the food industry withholds the food. There have been people arrested dumpster diving, and this is relatively common. So the way we get the food, which is why we don't get arrested because we're not dumpster diving, although we often dumpster dive as well, but sometimes you do get in trouble for that, we go to the produce worker, we ask them to give us the food that they can't sell, and they might turn you away a couple of times because they've had bad experiences of people saying they're going to take the food and then it sits in the back and rots. But if people now know Food Not Bombs is real, we're going to come and get the food. So it's pretty easy now for us to get day-old bread and pastries and other discarded food and make meals, and we get quite a bit of food, enough to do that. But the reality is that most of it is really withheld. We can, like, for instance, we can't really get food from places like Safeway and Winn-Dixie and Piggly Wiggly and things like that, because they're big corporations that just refuse to give us the food. They, even though there's a Good Samaritan Act, which was signed by Clinton, which protects them from liability, they just don't care, because they really want to force people to come in and buy their food. And so that's in that right now. It's like incredible. Even though our food is vegan, Tyson's just shut down a bunch of meat packing plants across the United States, laying off thousands of people. And I suspect that the food crisis this fall could get to be even more dramatic, that more people are going to go hungry because you have the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea shut down. And so the fertilizers haven't been getting out. I know that in the area of about 70% of the U.S. farmers didn't plant because they couldn't afford the fertilizer or have access to the fertilizer because of this war. And then you have, issues of floods and droughts, and then the diesel prices are going up. So that diesel is key to eating. That's how our food is transported. That's how our tractors are run. We're kind of bracing now for what could be an amazingly bad winter of food shortages. So here they're throwing it away. They're not willing to share it, and there'll even be higher food prices as a direct result. And in some of the places where we share food, it could be very, very dire, like in Southeast Asia and in parts of Latin America, where in Africa, because of the skyrocketing price of fuel and of fertilizer. Our group in Manila is got a program. They have a jeepney that they somehow have access to, which is like kind of a personalized bus, so to speak, and they drive around picking people up and taking them to to get groceries and things like that. It's called Food Rides Not Bombs, because the fuel shortage in the Philippines is dire. They're having rationing, just like they are in other countries like Bangladesh and so on. So it's quite the crisis that's happening already, and I can only imagine how bad that might be this coming winter, the harvest might be very, very low. We see now the Mississippi and the Missouri, Kansas rivers are really low, and they've had to the barges that bring the grain down to are having to be only loaded halfway or part way because otherwise they run aground. So there's like multi levels of problems possible with the issue of hunger this coming year. It's like quite tragic.
What do you think about the parasite that they put inside the vegetables? I'm gonna say they put it in there. That's just my opinion. But what do you think of that?
Of the what? I'm sorry, I didn't
Of the
hear.
vegetables, the parasite that was in the vegetables.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that's really interesting because there's a lot less. Well, one of the things I guess under the Trump administration, they've gotten rid of a lot of food inspectors.
Mm.
Also, I think a lot of these illnesses from produce can be attributed to we know that a lot of the problems with the lettuce and having making people ill is because they're near there are animal feedlots near where the vegetables are being grown, and they are because they're feedlots and not a natural way of growing meat. There can also be a lot of problems with that. With their poop basically flooding the fields, and normally that would not be a problem, but it is in our agriculture because we're using they're using antibiotics on the crops, and they're feeding them like grain that they don't usually eat as a natural way of living. And so there's a lot of this is getting to be quite the crisis. And one of the things is that we have to be very careful with that ourselves. Now, the reason we were originally vegan is it reduced the need to refrigerate everything, but now with this problem, we have to be even more careful with washing our food and making sure, particularly for making salads, that are not going to be cooked. It's very, very important to make sure that all the vegetables are well washed, because this is like really quite the tragedy. And fortunately, in all the years, we've fed millions and millions of people. Probably some people think it might be several billion meals have been served. That would probably be an underestimate, considering we're in 1,000 cities, and that we've got like dozens, 100, 200 people eating at each place, and going on for weeks and years, So, but we've been very blessed that no one has reported being made ill or anything like that. But this is really sad that people are getting sick just from vegetables, when that should be a healthy food alternative for everybody. It's essential for people to eat vegetables.
Me myself, I'm a pescatarian. I eat fish, but I don't eat all seafood. So I don't eat the bottom feeders and shrimp and stuff. I just eat regular fish. But yeah, I love raw vegetables, and now they're trying to tell you that you have to cook it just to get rid of the parasite.
Yeah, that's so sad. Yeah. So the whole food system is a massive crisis now, and I think like the Arab Spring was sparked by high food prices. There was the produce worker that burned himself in Tunisia to burn himself to death, and being pressured for more money to the cops and so on. And then just the price of wheat. So that's going to be a real crisis, because you have the area where they're growing wheat, and both in, Russia's having trouble exporting wheat, and I think they've stopped exporting wheat, really. I know they're holding on to a lot of their resources, because everybody's batting down the hatches, preparing for there being a food crisis, an economic crisis. And of course, the area where they grow wheat in Ukraine is in the middle of a battle, so war. So and then also grain shipments coming. I don't think any more coming out of Ukraine at all, because then the ships can be blown up, and that's what's been happening also in part to the Russian grain, is that the U.S. bombs their ships. So it's really tragic. And And then you look at the plates of food in the U.S. military ships, the George Washington, the Abraham Lincoln. It's tragic, people, families are shocked when their sailor comes home and he's like weighs 30 pounds less than he did when he left to go to sea, and so we can't even feed our own troops. It's just the whole thing is really sinister, very, very sinister. I mean, we have nothing else. We should at least have food for people that are, risking their lives for really a completely wasted time war, basically defending the interest of the Epstein class.
Hmm. So since you've been arrested for so many times for feeding people, what made you keep going and keep doing it?
Well, first of all, I really want to change society. I don't want to stop. But also it's been just one. They're not. I don't feel like I'm not going to let the government stop me. Just what that's the bottom line. But also, it's been a wonderful thing to do. I mean, it's such a. I possibly, if I had not done this for 8 years before I was arrested, maybe I would have. If the first week I went out and got arrested, I might have stopped. But probably not. But it was such a magical first 8 years. I was like, what? You're going to tell me not to serve food? You're going to arrest me? That's crazy. And and we need like food, not the back when we started Food Not Bombs, there was a thing in 1980 called The 100th Monkey. And it was a book. A book came out, I think in like 82, that was called The 100th Monkey, but there was an idea that's floating in 80 about that, which was that the monkeys would, started washing their food in a river, and in Africa, and before long, monkeys in Americas were washing food. This was the theory. It's not necessarily accurate, but it was what this author was proposing was happening. And so we had, one of the reasons we named ourselves Food Not Bombs. So every time you'd go into the grocery store, and there would be all these boxes, and they'd say Food Not Bombs, because that was the food they're setting aside for us. And then people say, oh, we're going to go to Food Not Bombs, or, and then you see the banners, Food Not Bombs. So with the idea that ultimately it would just be in everybody's consciousness that we'd go, of course, we should be spending our resources on things like food and housing and education, medical care, not on bombs. Mm-hmm. And so that was our theory, was that we say it just becomes part of the consciousness of society, where you just like, yeah, what is wrong with our government that they spend all our money on bombs, and when we should be, caring for one another. So, just been, I'm just not going to allow them to stop me. That's just the way it is.
So what do you think that people misunderstand about homelessness?
Well, I think that they created this whole ideology that somehow the homeless are different than us, that they are lazy, they're drug addicts, they're mentally ill, and they're definitely, homeless people that are drug addicts and they're mentally ill. So, but they've created this mantra over the decades that that they're not us, that they're, you'll hear city council members, basically call them human animals, the same way that the Israeli government talks about Palestinians. And so they're dehumanized. And there's been an intentional campaign of dehumanization of the homeless. But the reality is a huge percentage of homeless people have jobs. A huge percent, they're essentially American workers that couldn't pay the rent. And even if they do fall into problems, for instance, it would not be hard to become mentally ill if you were completely stable and sane when you had housing, because of the fear, first of all, of becoming homeless, and second of all, being on the streets. You could get post-traumatic stress disorder because you're always looking behind your back, and somebody gonna, somebody gonna beat you up, rob you, that kind of thing. Also, roughly, I think a huge percentage of the homeless are African Americans, which is a real tragedy, and that stems from the inequality in our society, the basically institutional racism, and so and many of the people of color that are homeless are working full-time jobs and just are either I know, like in I have a friend here that Crystal, she lives outside, and she has a job loading trucks at UPS, and she occasionally has a job as a sampler at the Costco around the corner, and she saved up enough money to rent an apartment. But the problem is she doesn't have a what they call a FICO score. She can't, like, to rent an apartment in Santa Cruz, you have to have your credit run. You have to have a high FICO score. Also in our county, if you have a misdemeanor conviction, which, since it's illegal to live outside, it's not hard to have a misdemeanor conviction. You're banned from renting apartments unless you have like a personal relationship with somebody you run into. But most of the large apartment complexes in the city, that's the first way they make sure you don't get in. When they have so many people applying for units, they just go, okay, conviction, misdemeanor, you're out of here. You're not even going to consider renting to you. So and so a lot of the people that are many of the newer homeless people are retired people whose Social Security income is so low compared to what the rents are that they can't afford to rent any place. There are many single older women that are becoming homeless, and this is super tragic. We get women coming to Food Not Bombs and saying, "Hey, is there a women's shelter here?" Well, the women's shelter, you have to be have an address to enter it, and that you have to be fleeing a partner who is committing violence against you. But if you're living on the streets and you're a single woman in a car, and the police tow your car, which is real, they aggressively ticket people who appear to be living in their cars. So they frequently then can't register their vehicles, and then they end up losing their vehicles, and then they're on the streets. And just to hand them a pup tent and find a homeless man that we trust to protect them and to set up her tent next to them, and it's just tragic. So many of the, I know that also a large number of homeless people were injured at their work, and they couldn't get new work because they're just so disabled, and the disability income is not enough to pay rent either. So it's basically, it's just regular Americans who are falling through the cracks because of the way the economic and political system is organized. And we've got to get over this whole thing. It's their own fault, if they just had pulled themselves out of their bootstraps and they just, were moral beings or whatever, then they wouldn't have been homeless. But it's just anybody at this point can become homeless if you're a working class American, because all it takes, most Americans, working class Americans, only have like a $500 emergency can be enough to send you to the streets.
Divine Creation, did you want to say something?
Have y'all ever thought about a program like relocation? Because like it's a lot of places down south, Alabama, Mississippi, those states, that there's towns that are actually paying people like $5,000 to stay there for 16 months and stuff like that, just to raise their population. And then they have their Social Security income is significantly higher. The money, they can pay rent easy if they're willing to relocate. Like, have y'all thought about a program like that?
Well, every city actually does have a program like that called Homeward Bound, basically, where you can get a bus ticket. Every city will give you a free bus ticket to anywhere you want to go in the United States if you show up at City Hall and say you're homeless. But the thing is, people don't do that because they have first, family ties and friends in their own community, and there's a feeling that you're more likely to get off the street if you stay in your town and you use the resources that you're already familiar with. And it's very hard for people to just, you know, move to a state where they know nobody. And, you know, even though it does make some logical sense. But the other thing I'm finding, I do have like a family that I know who did try that, and they ended up back on the streets here in Santa Cruz, because it turned out it was just impossible for them to have no connections. Also, a lot of times I've found that I get a lot of calls from the South from seniors and who are looking for food, and I know there's a lot. But it's like a lot of single men, for instance, can't get SNAP, and it depends on the situation. So it's often, you know, you know, that can be, you know, some people make it and do it and it works out, but often it's just, you know, people don't want to leave all their friends, you know, they what they're familiar with, and just, you know, plop down in a you know, city where they know no one, and even to figure out how to get into a town where they have such cheap rent and so on could be very difficult for people. Just to learn, you know, to figure out the logistics of all that, you know, what places like that. You know, people don't really have access to the computer, you know, when they're living outside. And you know, they just have all their own local habits, you know, of where they go in their town, what they do, who you know, it's just very difficult. People, I do get a lot of people, because we're the most expensive rental market in the United States, Santa Cruz, but a lot of people still come back. You know, they might go to Fresno, they might go to Central Valley where it's cheaper. But I just ran into a family that went to Fresno, and they just could not make it there. You know, even though it was cheaper, it wasn't cheaper enough, and it was just too difficult for them. So they just came back to Santa Cruz, because this is where they had more connections, and it was less bleak from their point of view.
So I have. Oh, go ahead.
So it draws my next question, and then I'll be quiet. Have y'all ever thought about bringing a volunteer therapist to talk to people that's willing to be talked to?
Oh, sometimes that does happen. Yeah, we've had people come out and you know, you know, provide, you know, listen to people and so on. I think a lot, you know, the problem with that, you know, I mean, it's really wonderful for the time that happens, you know, on the day that happens, but to have some kind of consistency enough to help with particularly things like, you know, schizophrenia, bipolar, things of those nature, you need a lot of consistent support. Sadly, here, and I think this happens a lot, usually people are given psych drugs, and that can be debilitating. Sometimes it's very helpful, but a lot of times it can be just a huge problem for people to really stabilize their life, because now they're struggling with psych meds, and you know, so and it's a shame, because like the mental health system, you know, the most common thing here is people that have severe mental health issues. They you know, they put them in a facility and give them psych meds, and that's you know, that's it. You know, no real therapy, no real help. It's just assumed you're going to spend your life on psych meds in, you know, locked up in a facility. You know, and that's we have a thing called Proposition 1, where they raise, you know, billions of dollars to institutionalize homeless people in you know, mental health facilities, but it you know, it's just, you know, it's really not a great solution. But you know, the thing about therapy on the street, though, that is good is basically when people have expressed this a lot to me, and we get very severely mentally ill people eating at our Food Not Bombs. But you can see an amazing transformation over time, because our volunteers connect with them as though they're not lesser than.
Yeah.
And just that alone is one of the repeated coming to eat with us day in and day out. And we treat you with as though you're an equal human being, that you're not lesser than. Um, that transforms a lot of people. I mean, I can think of right now like 5 or 6 people that eat with us every time, who used to be way out there and scared people, and now they're just they're just very relaxed, and they're not like having a difficult time, and they're very, super chill, and so that's really the thing, is to just to treat the people that are having these issues as worthy people, because that's a lot of what they didn't get when they were children, and that's a lot of why they are having their issues on the street, and so that's been really beautiful to see.
So I want to ask you 2 questions. This question is: after everything that you've experienced doing this work, has your view on people changed?
That's an interesting question. Um, I don't really think so. You know, I've always had a very probably naively optimistic view of people. Um, Even though, like in Soup Street, you could see when I moved to Appalachia, I was beaten up frequently by the classmates because I was from out of town and that kind of thing. But it didn't discourage me at all. I just remained optimistic, and I'm just very excited about possibilities. One of the reasons I like to write, and why I wrote this book and the other books I've written, is I just find it challenging, but also it's another form of being artistic, and that way I can I think there is this kind of spirit. See, this is a lot of I know people get really discouraged under the Trump administration with what's going on with ICE and the violence of just it is really horrific. What is how our society is going. But the thing is that I have a Substack, Keith McHenry Substack, anarchist cook Substack, and I have one of my essays is the revolution of compassion, because you've really we see with social media, like this divide and conquer, the bad people that supported Trump, and the bad people that supported Biden and Harris, or the whatever the bad people are. But the reality is, Americans are actually super compassionate. It's the media and social media that give the impression that we're not compassionate. But you have a flat tire and you're struggling to take to get the lug nuts off. Somebody will pull over and help you do it. And that, and then in a way, that's also an important feature of Food Not Bombs, is that, say, for instance, if they started issuing permits to help people that needed to have their help changing their tires, what kind of a society is that? Food Not Bombs is like, we really promote this idea that it's an unregulated gift of compassion to be sharing food with your community, and people are really compassionate, and so I think there's a lot of hope because of the human spirit. So we can see massive support against flock surveillance, AI data centers. We're finding that people that used to come by and just drop off clothing with us at our meal, now get out of their car and come and say, man, we are so appreciative of what you're doing, and thank us. So there is all this compassion, and people in America would actually support each other and help each other, and do. And this whole divide and conquer with using the Democrats and Republicans, or and all this and that, that's not really the way Americans are. We actually do care for each other. We do help each other. When Katrina happened, Food Not Bombs was on the scene in New Orleans, I think on the 7th of September, and we stayed there for 8 months. And we had people from all over the United States come to join us and help us provide for people and break people out of the attics and everything. We had massive amount of support. And the only people that were not supportive were the institutions. So, for instance, the Red Cross barely even came there. When they ran the Astrodome, the people there were complaining. And we had a pirate radio station in the Astrodome so that people could find their relatives, because it was like 20,000 people in this giant facility, and how were you going to find each other? So we did a battery drive and radio drive, and people had transistor radios all over the Astrodome, and that way somebody could come to our booth and go, hey, we're looking for my grandma, we're up at the radio booth, come over, and then people would come and they'd connect. But they also, people complained about the fact that the Red Cross didn't bring any food, and you had to go outside and eat at Food Not Bombs. So the institutions have their own, just like withholding food instead of throwing it away instead of sharing it. These institutions have this level of social control that is brutal. While the regular people, if we just left it up to ourselves largely, we would, we do care for each other, and we are willing to help one another. So I haven't lost that feeling that there is good in people. And I just don't really, I don't worry if you happen to be voting for Trump. You might have done that. You might not be appreciative of what Trump's done, because it didn't turn out he was a no-war president, and the economy isn't going great. So I think a lot of his support is no longer, and because they're good people, they really are just the salt of the earth, and they were hoping for something better. Grass is greener on the other side.
So I want to open this up to the rest of my panel. Golden Eagle, has anything that Keith shared tonight changed or challenged the way that any of us have looked at hunger or homelessness?
I don't know that it's changed the way. Maybe it's given me a better perspective on him and what he's done over these years, and it's definitely given me some food for thought. Okay. But yeah.
Divine Creation, has anything changed or challenged how what you've heard tonight about your way of thinking?
Nah, he just confirmed that it's ever so hard for the 5%.
Moon Tortoise, I don't know how much you've heard of that, what Keith spoke about, but in what you have heard, did anything that he shared tonight, has it changed or challenged how you look at hunger and homeless?
Yeah, I listened to most of this while I was running around, actually, as it turns out. And I think everyone needs to spend a year homeless in America. I'd be perfect. That's what I gathered from this, because some of the things you touch on, it's really incredibly hard living like that. It's really hard, and that's what changed in my mind as I came up with that.
If being homeless is a full-time job, and imagine how smart you have to be to survive as a homeless person. I've been homeless 5 times, and you have to have a lot of ingenuity. And I think all my times of being homeless was due to a health crisis, losing a job, and then ending up on the streets. But you have to be very clever and very smart. And one of the key things about when you look like you may become homeless, the last thing you want to do is to, before you lose all your money, is get a membership at the YMCA or a place that has a shower. That means that can be $35, $40 a month. That is the best $45 a month you ever spent. But so that you have to be super smart to survive on the streets.
You learn skills.
Yep, you really do. And then, of course, up against all kinds of problems with cops and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I lived in my car for a year, and in certain places they kick you out, certain parks and stuff from sleeping in it and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
Burger King bathroom, I didn't eat there, but the bathrooms were like my everyday bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. You learn like which restrooms won't kick you out. You
Yeah.
learn the McDonald's has this kind of side door that they're not paying attention to, or that's near the bathroom, so you can pop in there. Or, I've lived in a fancy bathroom in a state park in Kentucky one time. Had marble walls and stuff, and my wife and I sit there all night reading books, and it had a hot shower, and because it was winter, the rangers never came by. Then we'd go and hang out and watch the deer outside and stuff. If you can figure stuff out.
So, after dedicating so much of your life to this, what do you want your name, Keith McHenry, to stand for?
Well, I want for compassion, for peace, social justice, um, that you freedom, that you can live free. I think my next memoir will be called Always Free, because the food's free, but also I have been free. Even though I've been jailed a lot, I really am free. And the fact that jail won't intimidate you makes you even all the more free. So yes, that just whole like standing for what is important, and like the friendships, the community, the connections. That's what I want to be remembered for.
Mm, I love that. All right, so we're gonna get into the reflection, and then when we do a positive, everybody does a positive message for the evening before we wrap it up.
Okay.
So, Golden Eagle, can you read the reflection?
Yeah. Tonight's conversation reminds us that hunger isn't just a conversation about food. It's a conversation about people.
Your hand.
Shall I start over?
Nope.
It's about community, and it's about what happens when we stop seeing someone as a problem that needs to be resolved and start seeing them as a human being who deserves to be acknowledged. Sorry, my phone just went crazy then. We may not personally have the ability to change an entire system. We do have the ability to decide how we treat the person standing in front of us. Sometimes change begins with legislation. Sometimes it begins with activism, and sometimes it begins with someone saying, "I have something you need, and I'm willing to share it."
I like that.
And I want to just also say really quick, Mr. McHenry, I really just enjoyed listening to you speak, and how you how you kind of really in the conversation even covered and went the full spectrum of food to bombs, and just really it showed how all things are connected, and and story that I really do. I think from the homeless person on the street who needs a sandwich to the bombs being dropped in Iran or anywhere else around the world, and just yeah. So I thoroughly loved. I didn't speak a lot, but I really just was soaking in every word. I really appreciated your story, because again, it just you put it together so perfectly, and yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful.
Before we close tonight, join us again Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when Mansfield, Ohio artist Earn Keys joins the People's Podcast for How Did I Earn My Name? We're going beyond the music to talk about the man behind the name, his journey, his growth, his creativity, and what it took Earn Keys to earn his name. And we're asking you the same question. How did you earn your name? So,
Wow, that's beautiful. What an idea.
so we're gonna do a positive message before I do the closing, and I want to invite you back on if you wouldn't mind, because there's more to this story. There's so much more to the story. Where can people find your books and
Yeah, so if you can come to foodnotbombs.net and you can sign up for the email. I don't do a lot of email blasts from the MailChimp the form that's on foodnotbombs.net. And then below it, you can order Soup Street. Also, you could get Anarchist Cookbook, which is another book I wrote, and Hungry for Peace. All those books also, there's a PDF on each of the web pages for each of these books, so you could read it for free, because a lot of my audience lives in the global majority and they don't have access to mail or to money, but I want people to read my book. So that's foodnotbombs.net. You can also email me off of foodnotbombs.net. You can call me toll free, 1-800-884-1136 from that website. And you can, I think I need to make a link to my Substack there. I also have another website, keithmchenry.net, and that has my paintings, my past interviews. It'll have probably this interview on there. It'll have, it shows my Substack, connection to my Substack, and all my books are also on that page, keithmchenry.net.
Yes, and I love that. And if all possible, since you're on your laptop, you could put it in the comments.
Oh yeah, okay.
So people can just, when they come and watch this, they can click on it. Okay. And yeah, I didn't get to mention that you're an amazing artist also. In the little thing that I did on TikTok, I put your artwork in there, but I didn't get to mention that you also are very creative and amazing artist.
Thank you. Yeah, that's how I got started on this. This was supposed to be an art project that spent an entire life being me.
What a life. What a life. And I wanted to say, those psychiatric meds that you were talking about, that's what they end up doing to my dad. They thought my dad was having something when he wasn't. He was just had a nervous breakdown because he's bipolar and they didn't know. And they put him on all these psychiatric meds, and now he has early onset dementia. And he was born in 1954. So he's not much different than you. And now he lives inside of his head, trapped from the medicine that they put him on.
Yeah, it's just really tragic. I mean, I'm sure for some people it really helps and is necessary, but it's way overprescribed. It really is. It's just way overprescribed.
So that was the private chats you put it in. There'll be a thing that says comments.
Where is the comment part? I don't know. I put that in the wrong place.
Yeah, but that's okay. I can copy and paste it and put it into the other place. Yeah. It may not highlight like you had.
Right. Cool.
But yeah. So, but I'm gonna send you this. So we're gonna leave with a positive message before I do the closing. So, if you want to start with a positive message, could you do a positive message to the world?
Yeah, I think there's so much hope in the human spirit that we don't need to get down by all the horrible news. I mean, it's not bad to know what is happening in your world, but the reality is we are really a compassionate people. In fact, I've been all over the world, and people are compassionate in every part of the world. And so we should celebrate that human spirit that is really so compassionate.
Yeah. Divine Creation, do you want to leave a positive message?
I do not have a positive message, but something was said, and when it was said, it hit me dark like black ice, like it almost changed my frequency. And so I have to, because I heard it verbally through here, I have to speak back against it on here. Don't take this the wrong way, Moon Tortoise. I rebuke everything you said about that homeless stuff. That touched me a very negative way when you said it, and it felt like it altered my energy some way, and so I got to speak against that. So it wasn't nothing personal. It was just personal to me, not personal to you. So I had to speak against that because nobody has to feel that. I done felt it a couple of times already, not for no year, but nobody has to feel that. I don't wish that on nobody, especially myself, and I don't like the way that it touched me when you said that. So I had to speak against the mountain. So that was it.
May I?
Yes.
I agree with you. I appreciate you. I've been there too. A bunch of times I've watched my family face near homelessness, and I guess I don't want anybody to suffer. And I could re-aim my question and say, everyone should experience what it's like before they throw shade. Because I see a lot of people throw shade. And I absolutely love you, Mr. McHenry. I agree with you on mostly everything. My problem is that people don't see compassion all the time. I've seen a lot of ugly too in my travels. And because of my statement, sometimes people need to be shown that there's unseen illnesses. They need to be presented with information about how it really is.
Yeah.
So I can see how you'd be negative about that, and I apologize that it affected you in that way. It comes from a place of me being in the same place too. I just pulled my tooth out of my head with my fingers last week. We need to fix America.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it.
I love you.
So, what would be your positive?
All the love back. My bad. All the love back.
What would be your positive message, Moon Tortoise?
I want to see more people like this man. Maybe, a million of them standing at Washington. And I think the Netflix is taking over, the internet's taken over, and I see a future with this kind of mentality. So I'm very happy about that. It's been rough.
So, my positive message is it's okay to opt out. You don't have to comply. Compliance does not make a difference. You want to stay in the system and comply in the system, then that's what the system will do with you. They'll still continue using you. You want to opt out and stand on something that you believe in, then stand on it. Because this is your life. That's my positive message. Go ahead, Moon, or Golden. What is it? Divine Creation. My dad called me every name but my name, and I answered.
That's only when I'm in trouble, so I must be in trouble. Nah, well, I appreciate you because the questions I asked and the answers you gave confirmation to what I think my next journey is, and I won't speak on it now, but seeing the lack and knowing that I already thought that was my calling, I definitely appreciate you. It sucks because I wish it wasn't a problem, but I definitely appreciate you showing me that what I want to do could be reached out everywhere. Like, I hate that it is. It's like a double-edged sword. Like I hate that it's needed, but I'm glad that I'm needed. If it makes sense,
Well, beautiful.
All right, so we continue this conversation with us at unseentwistedtruth.com. We're building a community where people can bring their stories, their voices, their perspective, and their opinions to the conversation. We're the ears that will listen and where your opinion matters, and so does your story, because you matter. May your night be full of positive energy and high vibrations filled with peace and love and prosperity. Ashe, everyone.
Peace.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Yes.
That was
peace,
great.
peace.
Yay, have me back. Okay. I look forward to it. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Let's get to the bottom of this one. Unspoken truths that I miss one. Tap into the minds of the people, rather acknowledge before I dismiss one. Atheists, Muslim, Christians, Buddhists, they all got usage. All got perspective, it's a collective. Get to the bottom of the truth is. With our hearts uncovered. Where you detox from all of the lies you smothered. What them tries could have killed you, but with faith you recover. Yup. Peel off the makeup, we finna take off. Never said it'd be a cakewalk. Meditate till we charged up. Execute goes regardless. Decalcify my pineal. Breaking language barriers, we saw millennials. Planets passing age rotations, down me we owe. So down me we know. Sometimes we can be slow, that's why my ears open. Every drop you add could complete the ocean. Speak up, play your part too. Been vulnerable, it's so hard.